So good morning and welcome also from my fellow panelists who I'd like to very briefly introduce since we do have 30 minutes, not 30 seconds. And we will start with J.S. Anand, who is founder and CEO of Leva Hotels and Resorts, a hotel management company founded in 2019. Some would say 2019, a challenging time to start up a company, but a very successful hotel in Dubai. They have lifestyle hotels in the mid and upscale segments. Presently, 7 hotels in the predominantly the MENA region, but also looking at Europe. So great to have you on the panel, J.S. And we have Mike Collini, who we all, I'm sure, know, and also the company Hilton. Mike is Vice President Development, Central, Eastern, and Southern Europe. I don't think any further introduction is necessary for Hilton. Marek Kaszewski is Chief Operating Officer at Alkyon Group, who you may not know, so I will say a few words about that. Alkyon Group is an Austrian developer, owner with a focus on retail, but also hotels and high concentration of hotels. Presently, 3 hotels in Croatia, in Opatija, but looking at expanding the portfolio substantially over the coming years. And basically also interesting for the brands here and operators that also interested in signing management contracts with the brands. And Georg Schlegel from Louvre Hotel, also no need for a more detailed introduction. Georg is head of European Development Strategy at Louvre Hotels. So we will be focusing, as the title says, on conversions. Conversions is quite a bright spectrum. We will also be dealing with adaptive reuse, but not solely adaptive reuse, because some of the panelists also maybe don't have a focus on that area. We will focus on the pitfalls and some best practices, or maybe mention a few projects. Mike has 1 or 2 that he will present verbally. And as we all know, in the present environment, conversions is certainly a hot topic, or something which is allowing for development in this rather challenging time, as we've all heard and all know, but also yesterday was mentioned numerous times, the challenges in the environment at the moment with inflation, financing costs, construction costs, etc. So we will deal with some of those topics. We don't have a necessary specific focus on the CEE region, so I think some of the things are more general that we're discussing, but we may mention some of some things that might be more focused on the CEE region in terms of challenges. So we want to focus on pitfalls, but I'd like my panelists, maybe as an introduction, more maybe on a positive note, in terms of what you see in the current environment, the opportunities and advantages of doing conversions in the present environment, and perhaps even in this region. So we'll start with you, J.S.
I don't know. I think for a brand like mine, I mean, we started about 4 years back. We don't have the time frame involved in terms of waiting for new builds. Conversions give us a lot of opportunity at this time. It's a very kind of strategic approach that we need to take, because post-COVID, in terms of investment, in terms of ROIs, owners have become more sort of conservative in terms of putting in monies. So when we get into taking on a brand, whether it's in the 3-star or the 4-star segment, we go with soft cosmetic changes, which is a brand, which is part of a brand guideline to a large extent. We don't have a prototype that we could make it a certain, a Radisson individual or a Wyndham something. We don't have that model at all. We go with what is existent, modify it as required, and we don't break walls. Conversions are either you go to the fullest extent. We have a great example in Nigeria. We were competing with a global brand for 170 keys. And we landed up, from a construction standpoint and conversion standpoint, we were about 40 or 50% lower, and we still got a great product.
Okay. Okay.
So, thank you.
No, thank you. And we'll also get to that topic in terms of branding, brand integrity with the conversions
Sure.
later. So, Mike.
Yeah, Jeffrey, I think the commercial reality today is that with lack of financing, particularly for new build, particularly in Western Europe, inevitably the focus is on conversions. And we at Hilton talk about conversions not only, our definition of conversions is a trading hotel that's independent or with another brand where the term is going to expire and comes into our system.
Yeah.
But we also, within this topic, classify adaptive reuse, which is the change of an existing office or residential building into a hotel. Yeah. And I think there's similarities in both, more challenges for adaptive reuse, but the commercial reality today, I think 75 to 80% of the opportunities we're looking at across Europe are within those two categories. The new build element is still active, particularly the further east you go, particularly in markets like Turkey, where there is a strong element of equity and less need for bank financing. But the reality, the commercial reality, is it's predominantly conversion or adaptive reuse opportunities. Okay.
Yeah, and Mark, with the development hat on, I didn't mention that, so kind of in the panel, we're seeing you also as the developer and owner, and I mentioned you have an aggressive expansion, and I imagine conversions is part of that. Yeah.
Indeed, what Michael said, that the current cost of constructions completely changed the thinking how and what to do with our investments plan. Definitely, right now it seems like it makes more sense to do this adaptive reuse, especially when you see some of the asset class like offices that are actually similar in terms of the structure of the building, that could make more sense to convert it into the hotels. Obviously, it comes with all the homework that has to be done, because it's also when there is a trend, it's also why we are here. It also creates some kind of pitfalls, yeah, and situations that can be threats, but threats could be also an opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Georg.
Well, from a brand point of view, of course, time to market. I mean, in many markets, we are fighting about market share, at least big hotel companies. So adaptive reuse and conversion is, so our definition is conversion is an existing hotel. Adaptive reuse is all the rest Michael explained. I think that's very important. Secondly, I think adaptive reuse in conversions allow you to get into locations where in many cities you won't get a site to do a new build, especially in Western Europe. So if you look to Germany, Austria, Switzerland, try to get a site for a hotel development in a good downtown location. Good luck. The other advantage is, of course, if it's a hotel conversion, you get historic figures. So when you do your feasibility, your calculations, you can base it on hard facts, even if you know the hotel has not been renovated for 20 years, but still it gives you an idea. And especially as a franchisor, so if you advise your franchisee and you propose projects to your franchisee, it's much better if you can come up with historic figures and numbers. As well, if you also have to find an investor, so an existing hotel is for sale, we have to look for an investor. We may have an investor. The first question of the investor, of course, is also, do we have historic figures? And the same question will come from a potential franchisee.
Thank you, Georg. So moving into the topic of of pitfalls, yeah, there's a number of risks and you know, things that have to be considered. And I think, as we all want to point out, the planning phase is, I think, essential for, you know, I mean, obviously any project, but even more so with conversions. So, you know, we came up with quite a long list of pitfalls. I don't know if we'll get through all of them, but maybe, yeah, if we start again with you, JS, one pitfall that you would like to mention.
I think conversions are the easiest for us, to be very honest. I mean, again, we don't go into major sort of, yesterday I heard a couple of investors talking about, oh, you've got to change the technology, you've got to see what kind of investment goes into technology. I think to a large extent, you need to define what exactly that conversion is going to be. Is it a conversion because of an underperforming hotel? Is it a conversion because you want a strategic positioning in the market with an upgraded sort of product? For us, we don't take on hotels to fill our numbers, because there's one development guy in the company, and that's me. So I do Africa, Middle East, and Europe. So if any of the other brands want a job, they can obviously meet up with me later. The question is, for us, we took on a hotel in Dubai, which was 184 keys. We took a different model. We had an F&B partner sitting right here. We created a concept of baker's kitchen, sort of a German concept, and came up with international cuisine also. We converted a 184-room hotel in 62 days. So we had the designs, we had the contractors. I think it depends from brand to brand what you require. I had a budget in mind. It was my asset at that time. And post that, we had 7. We have done about 6 conversions out of the 7 hotels. So pitfalls is only when the ownership is not able to promise to the funding that's required to a large extent, because that kind of throws you out of whack to a large extent. But otherwise, I don't see, of course, there are markets like Africa, which is not easy to be in. From a construction standpoint. Middle East is a lot easier, and Europe is relatively new to me. So I wouldn't talk about Europe much because I'm still trying to get into Europe. So I would say funding to a large extent, if it's defined and it's appropriately allocated, that would probably be the best, the only pitfall I have.
Okay. So again, focused more on the planning phase.
Yeah, from our side, I think that the biggest single area is the technical audit. Commercially, as George mentioned, you know, particularly with adaptive reuse, these buildings tend to be in central city areas, so the demand exists, and that's less of a concern typically. But particularly for adaptive reuse, the lack of homework, and that goes across any review, whether it's new build or conversions or adaptive reuse. But for adaptive reuse, it's doing your homework early enough, what I call the technical review, commissioning a condition survey, establishing very early on that, you know, the urbanistic matters can be addressed, that there is a genuine change of use and you can operate a hotel in that existing office or residential, but then really studying it from an architectural perspective in terms of the structural grids. Can you get your room types, floor to ceiling heights, the general flow of spaces, what existing MEP are we going to use, does our foreign life strategy work? And all this can be done from existing drawings, but with good architectural input. So I think the lack of that preparation, I think, could be a big pitfall. We looked at a hotel conversion in Eastern Europe. We looked at the drawings. We didn't really pay too much attention. We sent a full technical team to study. Yeah. And yeah, it was evident there was only one means of escape, and it needed a new staircase. And, you know, the deal came to an abrupt end once we'd prepared the property improvement plan, presented it to the owner, and he said, well, I'm not going to build another staircase. So, you know, all of that simply could have been avoided by proper early homework.
And even with the technical due diligence, we're working on a project for the owner they've already purchased and renovating, and then through the renovation process and rebranding, there's fire and safety issues that came up, some major costs, and asbestos. So now they have about 2 million additional investment, which was not foreseen, despite, you know, having a good technical due diligence. So you really have to, I think, be very careful in that phase. So it's more complicated. Marek.
I agree with this, that when you do your homework, then the pitfalls, it's just a process. There are no pitfalls in this case, because simply you have to do your homework, you go through all the processes. However, the pitfalls come when there are some unpredictable situations. I would maybe divide them into areas of attention where we have to put some attention into. It's all concerning the adaptive reuse. If we are talking about the adaptive reuse of the buildings with monumental protection, heritage protection, basically it already poses a threat to realization of that investment. I give an example of one of the cities in Poland, for example, where I don't know how to translate it, the monumental officer of the heritage protection, the lady was not fully aware of what does it mean. So she would like to implement the function that was in that building 600 years ago, like storing potatoes. And this was a big fight with one of my investors and friends to convince her that now this is a hotel, and it could be completely normal to have in the basement a swimming pool. So this is just one area. Second, I would say it's a pitfall could be, and we were talking, I think, yesterday about it, the professionalism of and hospitality-oriented architects. Meaning that sometimes also investors and architects are carried away with their imagination. And this leads them too far.
Okay. That's a nice way of putting it.
Other than this, as I said, and I agree with this, if you do your homework, if you go through all the preparatory process, then you shouldn't get into pitfalls.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I think there's one learning. I think the biggest pitfall you can have is not doing your homework. And your homework has quite a lot of facades. I think from an investor point of view, if you plan to buy a building, get in touch with potential hotel brands as soon as possible before you buy the building, because otherwise the expectations of the hotel brands or the requirements of the hotel brands and what is possible on your end, physically, technically, with an existing building, and also financially, might be get very complex. I have one example. Mike brought up fire life safety. So before I started with Louvre, I had previous engagements with large American hotel chains, and we had one project in Central Europe, in Western Europe, in Switzerland, which was a high-rise building to be built. It's a new build. And it was a mixed use of a hotel and private apartments. And of course, the American brand standards require sprinkler of the full building, not just the hotel, but as well the apartments. But the developer in Switzerland said, well, we cannot sell sprinklered apartments in Switzerland. It's impossible. People don't buy it because they always fear the sprinklers may go on and they may have damages. So there was a huge discussion which delayed the whole project for a relatively long time until we find a solution, which is at the end was we were sprinklering the hotel plus all the staircases to the apartment part on top of the building, but we did not sprinkler. We did not sprinkler the apartments itself. And the funniest part of the story was the company I worked for decided to fly in a fire life safety consultant from the States. So on my side, I said, oh my gosh, that costs a hell of money. But funny enough, it was Switzerland, so the American fire life safety consultant was cheaper than hiring one local. But the most interesting thing was when the fire life safety consultant reviewed the project and he said, oh my God, your walls are like a bunker. And this was the turning point where he has seen, well, you know, this is not the American way of building a building. So the apartments are quite safe even without sprinklers. So, you know, even here you can find compromise, but think ahead and discuss it early enough.
Yeah, so we had a number of other things that we could also discuss, but again, for the sake of time, it's quite limited. You know, but I think workflow issues, there might be space requirements that have to be, where compromises have to be made. And Mike, when we spoke, you basically kind of said it's all about compromises. So, you know, what are some of the compromises that you see also from a brand perspective? Because I think we wanted to touch on brand integrity, but we don't really have too much time for that. But obviously, I think all parties involved need to make compromises. Certainly the brands, the operator. I think, JS, you mentioned with your hotel in Dubai, you had some restrictions with one elevator, but you overcame that. You know, so through service, but maybe some of the compromises.
Yeah, typically it's on room sizes, and typically it's on our focus service brands, Hilton Garden Inn and Hampton by Hilton, where we like to have a consistent room size. Inevitably, on the conversion of resi and office, you have to compromise. Now, we've been extremely flexible in the last few years. We've introduced a suite component into those brands. So, you know, and that's also in response to market needs, post-COVID recovery, etc. But there are other key brands for adaptive reuse. Curio Collection by Hilton and Tapestry Collection by Hilton are extremely flexible. So they really lend themselves to the challenges that come out of an adaptive reuse. Yeah. But there comes a point when, you know, when is a compromise too much, yeah? When can you not have your kitchen next to your restaurant? You know, when is your means of escape not possible? When is the room size just too extreme that perhaps it's time to not proceed? So, but it's flexibility, and you know, we've really approached every deal much more open and owner aligned in the last few years to make it work.
Yeah, I think we obviously see it with the other groups as well. You know, the soft brands or affiliation brands. You mentioned, you know, the DoubleTree is kind of your conversion brand, but it was quite interesting to hear that also with Garden Inn and Hampton that you're also a little more flexible rather than, you know, because they're
particularly where there, and I'll mention some examples later, but particularly where there's a historic element to a former building that, you know, it does lend itself, and that's appealing to guests for a genuine, unique experience. But the core basics have to be in place.
Okay. Overcoming some of these you know, pitfalls. I mean, we've touched on compromises, so also from the operator. But what do you see as you know, the support that is needed to overcome these pitfalls? And maybe start with you, Marek. And again, we're running out of time. But you know, because you said you want to work with brands. What are you expecting? You know, looking at conversions, what are you expecting from the brand in terms of support? I mean, obviously not from the marketing perspective and positioning, but, you know, to help you with the conversion.
Certainly the flexibility is the word that actually helps a lot. But I would say the art of saying no is also very important sometimes. Not to push too much, because with the current, and I think the current development of number of branded hotels, and I think the plans, because I used to work for international chains in the past, so I know that there are some plans that we have to fulfill and so on. Sometimes it's good to say, no, this is not the brand that that we should put into that particular property.
Okay.
And then one of the things for especially working with investors that are not that experienced with the hotel business, it's quite important to give them a bit more in terms of knowledge. Why? What's the reason for? Mm-hmm. For example, we were discussing just now a couple of seconds ago, it was about the space efficiency, workflow.
Yeah.
All this, especially in terms of in situations of adaptive reuse, is extremely important, because additional 100 meters walking in and out from the kitchen to the breakfast room can mean actually one full-time job.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if it's not set during the process, then it can backfire on everybody, in fact. Yeah. Yeah. So it's hard to say that in a minute, in 1 minute or in 2 minutes, but I think again it comes to really dedicating a bit more time, because conversions, adaptive reuse, conversions is already the process that is actually not normal. Yeah. That requires a bit more explanation. It's like going to the doctor. It's just if he just gives you the medicine without any explanation, you won't trust him. Then if you tell him, if you receive the explanation, this is the medicine for this can cause the side effects, and it's the same with the brands, with the adaptive reuse, and with these conversions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are getting short on time. Any questions from the audience? Yes. Yes, of course.
We have discussed about, of course, the requirements that brands have, but I think the pitfalls for an operator who would undertake a lease in a property that they take over, there is much more due diligence towards the technical part of the building, because that's what. Thank you. As an operator, these are causing us costs. So if we don't make sure that all that is up to a certain standard, it means in the 20 years of our operations, we're going to lose a lot of money in it. So I think it's not only looking at what the brands are looking for, because that's more geared towards life safety and space. But as an operator, you really need to look into what kind of building you get and what are the costs for maintenance, repair, etc.
There'll inevitably be inefficiencies of operation, and that is critical in assessing the viability. I just wanted to mention our few case studies. I think it's fair to say you can adapt anything into a hotel. You know, let the imagination flow, the creativity flow. I'm aware of it's not one of ours, but there's a hotel in Oxford which was a former prison, and you know, maybe it's not for everybody, but you know, when you check in and you go to your room, they've recreated the old prison cell as the guest room. But some of our recent examples, the Iceland Parliament Hotel, part of the Curio collection by Hilton in Reykjavik, is a adaptive reuse of the former Parliament building. Our first Motto by Hilton in Rotterdam was an adaptive reuse of a former bank and a dance studio and music hall. So you enter and you've got the whole sense of entry of the former banking hall, which creates a natural lobby. But I think my favorite is the Wasserturm in Cologne, which was the conversion of the former water tower. And, you know, maybe not for everybody, but a lot of these adaptive reuses do create a unique guest experience, which a lot of people are looking for today. So it's all about being creative and imaginative.
And Mark, you had mentioned that also as a possible pitfall is the history of the building. But, you know, so a prison could be, or actually a hotel that wasn't working well before, and then you have to reposition it in the market. So that's also certainly a challenge and pitfall. Maybe another hotel that I came up with, also a former prison, Hotel Wilmina, which won the award from our event, the 196 Plus Forum in Munich Hotel Property Award 2022. So if you're in Berlin, you can go visit that. They won the award not only on the conversion, but also on economic elements. But so as you were mentioning, there's all types of possibilities. Yeah. Yeah, so we are in the last seconds. It would have been nice maybe to have shown a little more projects and to go into a little more detail, but I think we briefly touched on the topic. But I certainly we're going to see lots of conversions moving forward, and certainly adaptive reuse also with the environment of office buildings, maybe less demand, so maybe some opportunities there as well. But time is up. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining me here on stage to the panelists, and wish you a successful and fun remainder of the day here at the conference. Thank you.